Hello guys, welcome back to Coniferia. Today we are finally building the theater slash arts complex that you guys voted for a couple of weeks back. And oh man, this build turned out weird. Weird in a good way, I would say, but yeah, nonetheless, it turned out weird. So I always knew that um, I think we had to use some funky looking assets for this complex, right? Because it's an arts complex. I mean, the architecture has to be sort of divisive in a way, I feel. I mean, the more people that love it, the better, of course, but the architecture and the overall style, it kind of has to make you think. You kind of want every person that looks at this complex to have, an opinion on it. The last thing you want is for it to be neutral, because architecture is art. So, especially when building an arts complex, the architecture should be distinct, I feel at least. And so that's kind of what we are aiming for here. Generally, I wanted to mix some funky looking assets with this concept of having like an underground parking garage. So that's what you guys can see me build right now. Super finicky to build. I use a lot of retaining walls, but it's with the parking lot roads assets. So the parking lots are functional, which is really cool. And if you stick around for the cinematics, you'll actually see cars drive in and out through the access road and park in the basement, which looks fantastic, I think. Another concept I wanted to experiment with was having these massive glass tiles kind of be the ceiling of the parking lot garage, basically, so that you can, from street level, you can look down on the parked cars and any traffic down there as well. And yeah, as you guys can see, I have to kind of mess around with procedural objects mod to get it to work. And if you guys know my building style, you know that I'm no expert in procedural objects or how to use that mod. So yeah, I think I do much better building sort of generic stuff. And yeah, whenever I have to build like an area like this or a complex like this where you sort of want to devote an extra attention to detail to make it stand out, that's definitely a weakness of mine when playing this game. I find it so hard and really have to push my creativity. I think in the end, I really like the outcome of this, and I hope some of you like it as well. As I said, it should be a bit, um, divisive because it's an arts complex. But yeah, generally, I like the outcome. Um, yeah, still fiddling with procedural objects just to get this glass roof to be a bit thinner. And I guess the funny thing about this theater and arts complex, and it's something we discussed in an earlier episode as well, is that at least 45% of the funding has to come from the city of Pine Harbor. And the city has had like a history of, let's say, not so responsible fiscal management. So it's not doing great. Like the budget of the city isn't great. And I'm not talking in game, because if you watch in game, if you look down there, you can see that I'm just blowing through cash. But as you guys know, I couldn't earn money in this game if my life depended on it. I'm talking like the narrative of the city is that there's just not all that much money to go around. So a response to the decision for the city council to actually spend all that public money on building this complex has already come from the regional council of Coniferia. This is actually a newspaper headline from the Coniferia Daily. And I don't know if you guys can sense it, but there are a few council members in the regional council that are questioning our decision to build this complex and use public money for this complex in a time where the city doesn't have a lot of money. But I mean, at least as you guys can see, we've gone with a really budget-friendly, cheap construction, right? I'm pretty sure it's so cheap to, make underground parking, import this crazy big glass facade structure from another country to make it the roof of the and the 7-story artsy fancy architecture, cheap to build as well. You get the point. But I think it turns out nice, and I think there's a good point from the investor of this project, William, as he notes. He is sure that this is actually gonna be a really great asset for the city of Pine Harbor. And I mean, while it might be expensive, then anything else, we could have built other stuff here as well. I mean, if we just sold it off to a private investor, they would probably just build luxury apartments or something like that. So, and I'm not sure that that outcome would have been as interesting from a budgetary perspective. Probably the better decision for the city, but from like a social and cultural perspective, maybe the theater and arts complex was the right decision all along. Yeah. As you guys can see, I'm trying to mess a bit with the colors here. Don't worry, I'm not keeping it blue and red. But yeah, I was kind of pushing the boundaries for how divisive the design could be. And as you guys can see, we end up reverting to a brighter look. And then something else that I felt needed doing was that I just felt the buildings were a bit too big. And so I didn't really bother working with procedural objects again, and just, as you guys can see, I decided to lower them, and then also lower one of the buildings a little more than the other one, so that it looks as if it's a few stories shorter, basically. I think this breaks up the symmetry a bit, and just overall makes it look a lot better, really. Now I'm working with this pathway to kind of frame the building and create a bit of a split area between the complex and the parking lot underneath. And I think it turned out all right. I'm actually surprised how much I'm using these vanilla and DLC paths. For all sorts of purposes, really. Yeah. So, as you guys can see, it's starting to take shape now. We're gonna have to use some Terraform network here to kind of elevate the ground or make everything the same level again, because of course, if you don't convert the assets to procedural objects, but you choose to lower them, then the ground around it will sink. Another weird spontaneous idea I got, let's make like a sort of a cafe area on the roof. And the idea behind this cafe is that it's pretty much run by volunteers, so it's a really cheap way to get a good meal, a sandwich, a good cup of coffee if you're visiting the theater and arts complex. And as you guys can see, I kind of try to extend this cafe area so that it hovers above the pathway. Don't worry, I'll add some pillars so that it makes a bit more sense from like an engineering perspective, because right now, damn, it's a really solid construction for this big thing to just fly over ground, basically. But yeah, don't worry, we're adding some pillars later. First up, we are adding some guardrails here. Also a bit of a funky design I ended up with. I think I broke all the rules for this episode in a weird way. But yeah, I like how it turned out. Yeah, we just need to make sure that you can buy your coffee. I mean, the only fair trade coffee in town that's not overly expensive, because it's, the cafe doesn't have to turn a profit. And then you can enjoy it without just walking, beyond the edge and falling to your death. That would be bad for business, I presume. Yeah, turned out rather well. We're looking for pillars here. As I said, structural integrity. Yeah, we probably need some pillars to hold this up. I should have probably chosen to turn these pillars into procedural objects. I'm pretty sure that's sort of the intention with them as well. Because as you'll see, the middle pillar there, it clips through the pathway, and you can actually see it in the parking lot below. And yeah, it doesn't look all that nice. Adding some pergolas. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it looks all right. And the build is soon finished. Actually, we need some more guardrails to ensure you don't. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to ensure here, because there's a big bulky glass surface covering the parking lot, so you can't fall down there. Whatever, it adds a bit of detail, so we're doing it. Here you go. Finicky, trying to place them. I imagine my tongue was sticking out here, trying to concentrate. I looked funny, I bet. And there you go. It all lines up. But yeah, I think it's actually really cool that we got this build done, because we don't have many specialized structures and areas in Coniferia yet. Much of what we've been focusing on are some of the real big picture things to just get like a city going and a region going, right? So that means, big sort of generically themed areas, lots of residential, lots of commercial, and then lots of infrastructure to connect it all up. The last couple episodes have been really focusing on the public transport infrastructure, and we've also expanded the road network. So I think that it's really nice to get this build done, because it sort of represents, as that the city and the region and this series as a whole has just kind of reached a state now where we can spend more time on creating some highly specialized and detailed builds such as this one, because we've already made it so far, right? We already got a pretty big city and region as kind of the backdrop to all of this, and I think that's really, really nice. So finally, we're doing some road marking just to detail it up, make it look great. Yeah, so a bit of a quick fun episode, this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the build, or at least have some comments on it. What emotions do this art complex invoke in you? Let me hear that in the comments. But yeah, make sure and like, subscribe, enable notifications, all that good stuff if you want to. Other than that, thank you guys so much for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Yeah, bye.